Uh, yeah, well, good evening. Late last year, old mate Fred Van Gessel and I flew to Christmas Island to do the Christmas Island Bird and Nature Week with a follow-on to Cocos Islands. Tonight's talk will be a brief overview of the islands and all the resident species on those islands, plus a few of the vagrant species that I was lucky to observe. A lot of the species on those islands are vagrants or passage migrants that stop on their way through. So most of the images are mine, taken with my little Panasonic TZ90. Where I've used other people's images, this has been acknowledged. I've also used a couple out of the bird image library. So this is Christmas Island across over near Indonesia, about 1,000 k's from the top of Australia. The first European was to sight it was Richard Rowe in 1615, and then it was found again and named on Christmas Day in 1643. This is just an illustration of the island. The main area is up here, Flying Fish Cove. That's the main area of accommodation and housing. There's a bit more up the hill here. The airstrip across in the middle. And you will notice the unusual shape of it. It's like a dog. And down the back end here is the detention centre. It's Christmas Island's a volcanic seamount, which rose about 5,000 metres from the ocean floor 60 million years ago. And it's about 137 kilometres square and about 361 metres at its highest point. This is from the northeast end. Viewing back here is Flying Fish Cove in the area and the accommodation. The airstrip's over here. And you'll see it's fringing coral reef, and it's been uplifted again about 10 million years ago. So a lot of the edging is fossilised coral reef. As you can see here, very rugged with mixture of basalt and ancient fossilised corals. And there's a number of small beaches which again have fossilised corals, and just shows you the rugged nature of the place because it's surrounded by ocean, it's battered on all sides. This is Flying Fish Cove, the main area that people live is down here and up further up the hill here. This is the Phosphate Wharf. And there's more buildings on just behind the photograph here. On the slopes of the island, we have what they call a dry vine thicket or scrub forest, and you can see the rugged nature of the country and the sparsity of the vegetation. On the top, where there was some soil, or there is some soil, you have rainforest, and this is what a normal rainforest looks like when you have the normal red crab population, because the red crabs eat all the leaves and fruits that fall to the forest floor, and they keep it very, very clean. This is the famous Christmas Island red crab, which does the migration in many millions, and they are the ones that clean the forest floor. There's a couple of variations in colour. This one just an orange form. There's also a Christmas Island blue crab, which is an endemic, and it seems to prefer the streams across the island more so than just in the dry rainforest. When they're in juvenile states, the crabs build these little colonies, and it's just like a little mini city. I thought I'd throw that one in. It's quite interesting. This is what happens in the rainforest when there's no crabs, and that normally indicates that the yellow crazy ants have decimated the crab population, and all the seeds germinate, and it looks like a rainforest we would expect here, but that's not the normal case. The birds, there's 133, I think it is, the numbers covered up by a little thing on my screen here at the moment. Confirmed species. There's 23 breeding or resident species, of which 9 are seabirds, with 2 species and 2 subspecies that are endemic. There's 14 landbird species, which 3 species and 4 subspecies are endemic. And the rest are made up of migrants, passage migrants, or vagrant species. The endemic species are the Christmas Island frigatebird, Abbott's booby, the Christmas Island imperial pigeon, the hawk owl or dewbook, and the Christmas Island white-eye, which is akin to our silver eye. Those endemic subspecies are the white-tailed tropic bird, the golden bosun, one of the most beautiful seabirds you will ever see, the great frigate bird, the Christmas Island goshawk, which at some stage looks like it will become an endemic species. It will go to the other list. They have a grey-capped emerald dove, the Christmas Island swiftlet, and the island thrush are all subspecies. We'll work through them. The sulidae, the gannets and boobies. It has been proposed that the name booby comes from the Spanish word bobo, meaning stupid or dunce, and refers to the bird's characteristic lack of fear of man. And there's possibly the other thing too is sula is Norwegian for gannet. And leucogaster, of course, means the white belly here. The brown booby breeds on the ground on the rocky sea cliffs around the island, and they estimate between 5,000 and 7,000 breeding pairs. They don't mind where they breed. There's a nest just at the back here. They breed in the gravel. This bird on the left is an adult. The one on the right is an immature. They like to be on the ledges where they can get a lift to fly out across the ocean. They get the uplift of the breezes. One of the other species is the red-footed booby, Sula sula. It has both of the species, actually, brown and the red-footed, have a pan-tropical range, and they estimate about 12,000 breeding pairs of the red-footed on the island. It is certainly the most populous and the most obvious of the species. Builds a nest in a tree of the grass and sticks and twigs. Very untidy looking nest. And they nest in colonies, and you can see there's many, many pairs breeding over this cliff. That was down near the golf course. And as I say, there's something like 12,000 breeding pairs. And one of the things you do notice when you first arrive at the island is the number of seabirds that are in the air all the time, all day. This is the endemic species, Abbott's booby, and you'll notice down here it is Papasula. It's the largest of the boobies, and Papa is Greek for father. It was originally thought to be an early offshoot of the gannets, but from genetic studies in 2011, they find it's likely to have diverged from the other gannets and boobies about 22 million years ago. But very prehistoric looking bird, the large bill and the flat head. It formerly ranged across the Indian and Pacific Oceans, and the original specimen was taken allegedly from Assumption Island in Madagascar, but it is now restricted to Christmas Island. And at the moment, it is endangered with approximately 3,000 breeding pairs. And it's classified as endangered because due to the clearing of the forest for phosphate mining, it's caused turbulence in the trees. The birds have trouble landing to feed the young, and the immatures, the fledglings, have trouble taking off because of the uplift or the breezes that come through from the coast. Also, the yellow crazy ants now farm a scaled insect which came in from Asia, and that is defoliating the trees, so it's allowing this turbulence for these nesting birds. Let's just show you the underwing pattern of this bird that was down on the road on Monday. And he also is a tree nesting species, as I explained, but a little bit more substantial nest because it is a much larger bird. The frigate birds, there are 3 species of frigate birds on the island. The lesser has a tropical distribution, and it's only a recent colonist with approximately 10 to 20 pairs breeding on the island. I only saw 1 bird in the days I was there. You can see the female has the white patch up here, the male, the underwing, the red gular patch. And as with each of the species, the immature or juvenile has a yellowish head. The great frigate bird is an endemic subspecies of the pantropical species with approximately 3,000 breeding pairs. Again, the female has this underwing pattern and this underneath pattern. The male is the easiest of the frigate birds to identify because it is totally black underneath. And again, the juvenile has this hexagonal pattern on the stomach with the yellowish head. I found these on the road there one day, and they're very pteranodon or pterodactyl-like, the way they sit and warm the whole of their body. I assume it's parasites that they're trying to get rid of by laying on the tar road, on the hot road. But they're just very, very ancient looking bird when they do that. The Christmas Island frigate bird is the endemic species. It only breeds on Christmas Island now and roams as far as Indonesia. It's critically endangered, as a lot of, or endangered as a lot of the species are on the island. And there's about 1,200 breeding pairs. It is the largest of the frigate birds, and it has much broader wing and much more robust. The female has the long white underneath and the piece up under the wing. The male just has it on the abdomen and these little patches under the wing. Much larger bill than the other frigate birds, more robust. And again, the juvenile or immature has the yellowish head. They've made a drinking pond for the frigate birds on the island in probably one of the phosphate mine holes, and all the birds come in there for a drink. You can see quite a number of species there. They come in and they skim across the water and pick up the fresh water for a drink. Occasionally, well, while we were there, one had an accidental swim, but it managed to get out. But they do occasionally drown in that pool, unfortunately. The tropic birds, as I said, the white-tailed tropic bird, or they call it the golden bosun, is an endemic subspecies. And my photos don't do it justice. If you want to have a look on the bird image library at Alwyn Simple's photograph of the golden bosun. They're just absolutely magnificent looking bird. There's about 6,000 to 12,000 breeding pairs on the island, and they breed just to the north of the township. The red-tailed tropic bird is a resident breeding, and we went out one day with one of the guides, Sue Robinson, who is doing a banding study and a study on them. That's why we have the photos. I have the photos of the juveniles. But some various stages of their life. Quite a lovely bird. They're just on the coast, just down the road from the tavern, and it's quite amazing to watch them. The gulls and terns, the common noddy, is a migratory breeder, and they believe some of the population there is sedentary. There's no numbers being for breeding pairs available. But this pair were just doing some sort of courtship or greeting behaviour that I photographed. Again, you can see the rugged nature of the coastline. I wouldn't like to fall over on it. Herons, white-faced heron, itself introduced somewhere in the 1960s, and they believe it's possibly breeding on the island. And the great egret is an irregular visitor. I took this photo in the front yard of one of the houses, and I wasn't aware it was an irregular visitor. I thought it was a regular visitor or a resident, but something we see regularly here. The eastern reef egret, there's both morphs, the white morph and the grey morph are both present on the island, and it is a breeding resident. In the Rails and Crakes, the white-breasted water hen colonised around 1991 or 92 in small numbers. There's only about 20 pairs. Fred and I went looking for it at the garbage dump, where apparently it's seen regularly, but we couldn't find it. This is a photograph I took on Cocos of the birds near the airport. So because it's available, or because it is on Christmas Island, I added it to it. The red jungle fowl was introduced, obviously for food. It interbreeds with the domestic fowl on the island. The Christmas Island goshawk was the subject of a talk I did in earlier in the year on Bird of the Evening. This is the one on the left. Is an adult bird, has been banded. You can see the band there. This bird here was one we captured and banded with one of the guides. Very accepting bird. You can get fairly close. This is just not, this image isn't cropped. This is straight out of the camera, the lower one. You can get quite close to them. After it was released, it just flew up and sat in the tree and looked at us. They haven't, well, the island hasn't been colonised enough or long enough by man, I think, for them to have a fear. But yeah, it will become an endemic species at some stage. It is considered endangered, but it seems that the population is stable from the banding studies. Feeds mainly on large grasshoppers, but may also take small birds. The Nankeen kestrel, colonised around 1940, 1950, and is now a breeding resident on the island. The Christmas Island hawk owl, or boobook, related to our boobook here, has a different call, has a similar boobook call, but also has a different call. I was unable to photograph it. The one I saw was too far back in the foliage, but it was good to find it. It's an endemic species, listed as vulnerable, and they believe about 500 pairs on the island. The grey-capped emerald dove, again, is an endemic subspecies which is vulnerable, very similar to our brown-capped here, but I think the silver looks quite a bit nicer. Saw a few of them on the island, so yeah, even though it's vulnerable, they are seen regularly. Christmas Island imperial pigeon, one of the endemic species on the island. Its population size is unknown. Seems fairly common in the rainforest areas and does come into the town areas at certain times. The swifts, the Christmas Island glossy swiftlet, an endemic subspecies of the glossy swiftlet. It's fairly common, it nests in caves on the island. Remarkably agile little bird. It flies low to the ground and through the undergrowth, through the trees, where normal swifts are more aerial. It is down along the edges of the ecotone between the grassy areas and the forest, and actually just goes through trees. Incredibly difficult to photograph. I do have pictures of it, but nothing exceptional. So I've lifted this one off the internet. The barn swallow is a passage migrant. The first day I was there, we were walking down to dinner and a swallow flew past, and I said to one of the guides later, I just saw a welcome swallow, and he said, we don't get welcome swallows here. And this was a new species to me. Looked for it for the 5 days on the island. On the last day, we were kicked out of our accommodation early, and I had a car hired, and we were having lunch, and a couple of the other people on the tour came in with photographs of two sitting on the wires about 200 metres away from where we were having lunch. But by the time we got round there, they'd gone. So I searched a nearby area where it had been mined, and was lucky enough to find one, but couldn't get a photograph. Permission wasn't granted to go onto the mining site. The Christmas Island white-eye, very similar to our silver eye. It's an endemic species and it is the most abundant bird on the island. The island thrush is the endemic subspecies of the island thrush. It's considered vulnerable, but it is fairly common around in the bushland areas and in the urban areas. There are numerous subspecies in Southeast Asia and the Pacific, and the plumage is fairly variable. In this case, on Christmas Island, the male has a richer underbelly, so I can assume this may be a male, and this could be the female. In Vanuatu, on one of the islands, the island thrush is totally black, and on one of the islands it's black with a white head. So they do have some variable plumage across the tropical areas of Southeast Asia. The Java sparrow, when we first arrived on the island, there were 3 of us walking around the back of the accommodation to go up the back stairs to our rooms. And I walked around the corner and there was a Java sparrow sitting in a shrub. The guy behind me saw it. Fred was third and missed it. And though we all looked for it for the 5 days we were on the island, we did not see another Java sparrow. They were introduced in around 1908 to 1923, and there's still, I believe, 200 to 300 birds on the island, but it does seem to be diminishing in numbers and becoming more or less common and than it was. The Eurasian tree sparrow, it was introduced in early 1980s, and it is like most of the sparrow species, it is spreading. Heard it every day and could not find it. And I was sitting having breakfast one morning, and this pair was sitting on a water bowl across the road. So I managed to get a photo. And although not a bird, this is the Christmas Island flying fox. It is the only mammal that is extant on Christmas Island, they believe. It's critically endangered, and feral cats and crazy ants are threats. The population is down to 2,000 from 4,000 in the 1980s. The other two mammals that have disappeared are the Christmas Island pipistrelle, one of the microbats, and the Christmas Island shrew. They are now believed to be extinct. The pipistrelle in the last 4 years, although Fred did see a microbat one evening as we were going down to the tavern for dinner, and they were going to get some recording equipment set up to see if it was one of the Christmas Island pipistrelles. So this possibility is still there, but not in numbers. Cocos peeling is another few hundred kilometres to the west of Christmas Island. They were discovered in 1609, but it was another 200 plus years before Englishman Alexander Hare established a settlement on the main atoll, and then John Clooney's Ross and former employees settled on one of the islands in the atoll. And we all know that the Clooney's Ross family ruled those islands for quite some years. There's 27 islands in the group. Only 2 are inhabited, and that is West Island here, down the bottom, near the airport, and Home Island, where Clooney's Ross house still is, and the Muslim population lives over on here. We went across to Direction Island, which we'll see in a minute, and also had some roaming around the other island. It's only about 14 square kilometres and at maximum 5 metres elevation, so it's probably at threat from global warming. Magnificent place, beautiful to see. I don't know who took this photograph. I lifted it from the internet, but there was no advice as to who took the photo. This is Home Island here, West Island across there. This is Direction Island down the bottom, and that beach was voted as the most beautiful beach in the world. And this is, in this cutaway here, is a known snorkeling place. Beautiful snorkeling in there, but quite dangerous, and you end up out here somewhere and have to swim back to shore, which I had to do. But beautiful, beautiful place. And this is just some of the lay of the land from the ferry out to Home Island. South Island, we had spent some time out there and did a little bit of bird watching. This is just a small little bit that's off to the side of the island. And this is Direction Island. They claim it's the best beach in the world. And that's the snorkeling spot was up here. So we get into the birds. As of December 2019, there was 150 species recorded on the islands. 39 are breeding or resident species, with one endemic subspecies, which is the Cocos buff-banded rail. And there's 5 introduced species. The 2 jungle fowls, the rock pigeon, the Christmas Island white-eye was also introduced and currently is common, although I didn't see it on the island, and the Java sparrow. The rest of it's made up of migrant or vagrant species, and quite a lot of waders call in there on their flight path. Again, the gannets, and want to mix photos of masked booby. I didn't see any of the seabirds on Cocos Keeling because we weren't over on the coast. We were mainly on the lagoon and on the islands, and we were only there for 3 nights. So we only had a couple of days really to explore the island. The brown booby and the red-footed booby, these are my photos from Christmas Island, but they are also, those birds are found on Cocos Keeling, and they are breeding residents, as is the masked. The 2 frigate birds, the lesser and the greater frigate bird, are also seen on Cocos. The Christmas Island frigate bird also is a vagrant there. These 2 are breeding residents. Again, the 2 tropic birds are found on the Cocos Islands. They are breeding residents. This, again, is one of my photos, or both my photos from Christmas Island. This is, of course, the golden bosun, but the normal white-tailed form is on Cocos. But I believe this can be a vagrant. The gulls and terns, the white terns, are breeding resident. Also, the sooty tern is a breeding resident, and they have other terns which are vagrants. There was a Saunders tern somewhere on the islands, but we couldn't find it. The white tern is also found on Christmas Island too, although I didn't see it. This was taken at Cocos. And this was on one of the, out on that Direction Island, the juvenile I found out there. There's quite a few sandpipers and waders call through. The local guide was telling us about there was a couple of red shanks. We went out and had a bit of trouble finding them, but I managed to locate them and put the rest of the group onto them. They are regular visitors or vagrants. The ruddy turnstone and common sandpipers are also regular visitors. The common red shank and stints are irregular. They're vagrants. But there was 3 red shanks there when we were there, which was good. That was a new species for me also. On the last day, we had to vacate our accommodation at 8 o'clock and sit around. We did go wander around, and the guide came in when we were sitting at the airport and said he'd found these long-toed stints. So Fred and I jumped in his car with the door that wouldn't close, and went round, and we found these and were able to photograph them. Again, these are just vagrants to the island. Ducks and geese, we went and had a look at a lagoon there one day, and there was Pacific black ducks on there, and I wasn't aware that they're an unusual visitor, but I just thought they were common on the island. I think there were 7 there at that stage. Herons, this is the white morph of the eastern reef egret. I photographed that out on Direction Island. It's a breeding resident, as is this one, the Nankeen night heron, a juvenile that was way out on a mud flat. It's not a good photo, but it's the only photograph I had. They do get some of the herons from Asia, which are vagrants, call in there. There was one there, but we couldn't find it. And this is their only endemic subspecies, the Cocos buff-banded rail. It is endangered. It was formerly restricted to one island, North Keeling, and they translocated in 2013 39 birds to Horse Island, and from there the birds have self-located to West and Direction Island. I photographed this on Direction Island, and once they got used to people, there was a few of them wandering around there. I don't know what the population was, but it's good to see that they are relocating to some of the other islands again. Apparently the distinguishing features include a greater amount of white spotting on the lower back and rump, and an almost complete absence of olive brown tints in the dorsal plumage. And there's also some differences in tarsal length. It's longer than any of the other 22 subspecies studied. There also appears to be no obvious geographic pattern suggesting that the closest geographic populations are not necessarily the closest relatives. So they are a widespread species, but it looks like they mix it up a bit. But quite a lovely bird. And the white-breasted waterhen again, we found this near the airport. The adult and the juvenile were wandering around there. Again, this is the green jungle fowl. It was introduced from Bali and Java, but it's now a breeding resident. It's said to be a pure species, as there's not much crossbreeding with the domestic fowl. Quite different, the female to the male, and more like a ptarmigan or a grouse than a jungle fowl. And the Christmas Island white-eye, which was introduced around 1855 to 1900, is now a resident on the island. And that's good night. Thank you.
I'll make one comment. I mean, I could make others, but I would thoroughly recommend to anyone given half a chance to visit Christmas Island that they would take that chance. David Attenborough dubbed it the Galapagos of the Indian Ocean. I've never been to the Galapagos, but I can certainly vouch that Christmas Island is an amazing place for wildlife, witnessing, and like the boobies being tame, and the red crabs. I would also recommend that if you did go there, to time it with the red crab migration. Even though a lot of the roads do get closed, it's just an amazing time to be there, because I mean you can get a chance to witness the mass spawning, but it's also when the whale sharks come in close to feed on the millions and millions of eggs of the red crabs, and it's a good opportunity to actually go swimming with whale sharks, which I was lucky enough to do. Yeah, it's just an incredible place. I can't recommend it enough. I can see Alan's unmuted himself. Alan, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I already asked the question, but I was muted, so I'm now trying again. A comment first and then a question. So just on Abbott's booby, and I actually had it as an answer to one of my crosswords, so I did some research. So Tom, you're right, it's only found on Christmas Island now, but it actually had a much wider distribution in the past, and the actual first specimen of it was taken on Assumption Island, and many other islands have records of Abbott's booby, but now only Christmas Island. Anyway, my question was, most people go to those two islands to find vagrants for their list, so you didn't mention any vagrants, Tom. Did you find any?
Not human ones. On the Cocos, we found the stints and the red shank. the long-tailed stint and the red shank, but not the only thing where there was the coel on Christmas Island, but we didn't find any sort of wader habitat on Christmas Island because it's mainly, you know, rocky and rainforest and coastal. So yeah, the vagrants, they do come through there, and apparently the garbage dump is one of the places to find them, but there was nothing coming through at that point in time. But certainly I echo what Mick said. It's an amazing place, and if you get the opportunity post-COVID, the Bird and Nature Week, thoroughly recommend it. It's a very, very active 5 days. You have guides take you out all day, and you know, you see all these things. So you make sure they make sure you see most of the species. You do have a little bit of downtime. Cocos Keeling was not much birding at all. We had a canoe trip. We had a visit to Home Island. We did a couple of restaurants, but it wasn't tailored around birding, except for one morning we went to one island and we went and saw a few birds. There was some curlew sands and godwits and things like that, but there was nothing there that I hadn't seen. But yeah, there is some different species there, and a lot more vagrants. If you went in the right time of year, you could probably see some very unusual birds, but you'd have to time it.
What time of year were you there, Tom? What time of year is the bird week?
Late August and early September.
Yeah, most of the vagrants, I think, start arriving late October or November.
Yeah. But look, from the moment you walk down, you know, the first day, all you see is just seabirds going down along the coast, because you're situated on the coast, and there's just a continual stream of seabirds all day, and it's just amazing. Yeah, thoroughly recommend it.
I've got to say that Chris and Liz and I and others were there in December quite some years ago, and going to the tip, we went there daily. Boy, did it stink in December in the baking tropical sun. But we went there looking for whatever turned up. Unfortunately, nothing much did turn up, but it was interesting to go there.
No, I think Fred and I only saw the swiftlets at the garbage dump. We weren't allowed to walk around because we didn't have a red vest on, but we were allowed to drive around. But there wasn't much at all at the dump, and it's not the sort of place you like to frequent. Back to you, Mick.
Another reason to go there is that, you know, with the phosphate, the pressure for more phosphate mining on the island, a lot of people there are trying to demonstrate that tourism can be a viable industry. So that's another reason to visit, is to support the tourism and try and make, yeah.
Yeah, so I was watching a program I recorded this afternoon about the price of phosphate is climbing rapidly because phosphate is becoming scarce, and as we grow more and more crops, they want more and more phosphate, so the price is going up. There's already pressure on the Australian government by the new Malaysian owner of the phosphate mines over there to do some further mining. At the moment, they're picking up the lower grade phosphate that is still left in the areas they've mined. And the phosphate is like in sources of rock. They just scoop out these areas because it's guano. But yeah, they're applying pressure because of the cost of phosphate at the moment and the need for it. And it's not guaranteed that the government won't back down and give them permission to continue mining. They've stopped it at this stage, but as we've seen, nothing's set in stone these days.
Yeah, no, that's right. BirdLife had a campaign recently on that, which had amazing support. It was a when there's a win. But yeah, you're right, Tom. It doesn't guarantee, which is another reason we've got to demonstrate that tourism can actually make money for the locals. Anyone else? All right, so a virtual mug for you, Tom. I'll get a club mug to you next time I bump into you.
All right, thanks, yeah.